Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Vince, and today we are going to be talking about a navigational mistake that I made cave diving and the narrow miss associated with it, all caught on camera. No diver is infallible, and it's important to be humble, stay paranoid, and be able to recognize our mistakes, to learn from them, and hopefully teach others to not make those mistakes in the future. And that's exactly why I've created this video. It showcases, in its entirety and on video, multiple navigational mistakes made during a cave dive that, while weren't a huge issue during the time of the dive, could have created a cascade of events that increased the risk associated with the particular dive plan. There is some housekeeping that I want to go over prior to getting into the nuts and bolts of the dive. First, this video is going to be cut into 3 parts. This introductory section that you're watching right now, the narration of the actual cave dive and a portion of the video, and then a final 3rd chapter where we review what could have happened and what we could have done differently to eliminate this navigational error. It's important for me to provide the dive plan and some basic navigational information associated with cave diving. When diving in an underwater cave, we use lines for navigation. This is, in effect, a piece of string or cord that shows divers how to exit the cave. One thing that cave divers learn in training is how to deploy a jump. In many North Florida caves, there are lines that are already placed in specific tunnels, and a jump allows you to attach your line to the piece of navigational line that you are currently on, and then connect it to an additional line in another passage. In effect, giving you your continuous guideline to the surface. Cave divers use line arrows or cookies. In effect, these are navigational markers that helps you understand where you came from so that upon exit, you choose the right direction to take. Now, prior to the dive that we're about to take a look at, I had been diving this exact same section of the cave for multiple days prior to executing this dive with my buddy. Given that my buddy had never seen this section of the cave, and while being explored, it has relatively low diver traffic, the plan was to take him there and show him some of the really cool stuff that I had found. Now, the dive plan consisted of multiple jumps through multiple different areas to get us to our desired location in the cave. The plan was to take the gold line through the lips, through the keyhole, making a left and following the gold line past the keyhole bypass jump. At that point, I would tie my reel to the main line, and we would go through the manhole, eventually coming to the July spring line. After tying into the July spring line, we would then make our way down that line, farther into the cave, and eventually come to a set of double arrows. At these double arrows, I would pull out a finger spool, and I would jump to the parallel lines to the left. We would follow the leftmost parallel line to the first junction, and at that first junction, we would make a left and check out that section of the cave. While this isn't an extraordinarily complex dive, and it's not tremendously far into the system, there were some navigational mistakes made that, had they been made in a different area, could have resulted in a catastrophe. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my very poor cave diving navigation. So at this point, I think that it's important to stop and at least let you know at what point in the cave we currently are. Right now, I have just finished tying in my line right here, which is the July spring line. In a moment, you'll see me head up the line, which is going to be to the right on the map. It's important to stop again because this is the moment that the first major navigational issue occurred. These 2 markers on the line are arrows, and they serve 2 major purposes here. First, because there are 2 of them, it indicates that there is a jump to another line somewhere around here. Additionally, they direct us out of the cave. The issue here is that those arrows are pointing the opposite direction that my buddy and I approached them from. We'll talk about why this is an issue a little bit later in the video. So at this point, I'm stopping again just to make sure that you're tracking on where we are. So I started by tying my main reel into the July spring line. We've already been there. At the next point, this is where the double arrows were. That's where I tied this pink line off. Finally, the place that you're seeing now that I am terminating this pink line is on the leftmost parallel line, which is located right here. Another quick pause here to point out that what my buddy has in his hand right here is a cookie. And what he's about to do is, with perfect technique, place it on the line of the reel that I just ran. Now, this tells us two things. It lets us know that if he's lost in the cave and I come back to the reel, if his cookie hasn't been collected, he's still in the cave and I'll leave the reel. It also points us in the appropriate direction out. So what you'll see here is that the line is splitting in two directions. The dive plan was to take the left at this T, and that is exactly what we do with the appropriately and correctly placed navigational markers. So we hit thirds and we are turning our dive. In the interest of time, I am going to edit some of the exit out. However, if you'd like to see the full video, let me know in the comments and I'll make sure to upload it. This is a perfect example of how cookies aid in navigation. You saw my buddy take his earlier, you're about to see me pick mine up, and it confirms that this is the line that we came from. Despite there being a line arrow pointing us out, it helps because it's personalized, mine has my initials, and I know that I put it there. It's not always as easy as you think to remember what direction you came from, because caves look so vastly different going in versus coming out. So we've arrived at the point in this dive that is the reason I'm making this video. I'm collecting the pink reel that is incorrectly tied in between two line arrows on the July Springs line. I'm going to let the video play without any narration, and I want you to try and see if you can catch what happens. It's pretty obvious, but also pretty scary. Pretty bad, right? Let's rewind the clip and discuss. This is the moment that Mr. Pink goes the wrong direction. Now, both of us made critical navigational errors at this specific tie-off. For myself, I tied in between these two arrows. That was due to muscle memory always tying between two arrows, despite them going the opposite direction that we approached them from. Now, my buddy also made a critical navigational error here as well. He should have placed a cookie on the line that we were leaving in order to indicate direction of travel. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that because I tied in between those two arrows, and we are so used to just following the arrows after a tie-in like this, he did not, based on muscle memory, even consider putting a cookie on that line. This is one of many examples where multiple errors can stack and cause cascading problems. I could have either tied on the back side of the arrow, which would have indicated to my buddy to place a cookie, or if he would have placed a cookie anyway, we would not have been in this situation at all. Luckily, I had been diving this section of the cave for a few days prior to this, so I remembered and knew that we needed to go to the right. So, in conclusion, what is the worst case scenario that could have happened here? Well, there could have been a catastrophic gas failure or zero visibility, all our lights went out, and we had to exit on the line. In that case, we would have hit the double arrows and had to follow the July Spring line to the Hill 400 line. After jumping to the Hill 400 line, we would have had to have found a directional marker that indicated the right way to go, in which case it would have pointed us toward the gold line. Upon hitting the gold line, we once again would have had to have found a directional marker, followed that directional marker to the exit. Now, this is, of course, the worst case scenario and highly unlikely, especially given our familiarity with the Hill 400 line and the main passage of the cave. However, it's important to understand that these navigational mistakes ought to be fixed because they can cascade into a series of additional problems that, if you have multiple navigation issues or you are very far back in a system that you're unfamiliar with, can cause true problems. Having to remember the direction that you came from adds stress and complexity to an already highly complex and risky activity. We want to keep these things as simple as possible. So, what could we have done better? Well, the first thing is that I could have tied my spool into the July line better. I should have tied behind the arrows and also placed a directional marker of some kind to indicate the direction that we had come from. Additionally, my buddy should have also placed a directional marker on the July Spring line, once again to indicate the direction that we were coming from and should exit through. I think that it's important to show these mistakes, especially in real time and with video, so that other cave divers and divers that want to become cave divers understand that mistakes happen, and you need to make sure that you stay within our cave diving limits because you might have to figure out a mistake that you make. Hopefully you learned something from this video. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section below. Like, share, subscribe, and of course, I will see you in the next one. I'm Vince with Flippers and Goggles. Thanks again for watching.